20 years of marriage built a landscape that felt mapped and memorized. We could predict each other's footsteps at dawn, the kettle's click before the toast popped, the dog circling twice before settling at our feet. We had weathered a starter apartment, a fixer-upper, 2 children who became teenagers, and a shoebox of Christmas ornaments labeled by grade and year. Weeknights were practical, leftovers reheated, emails answered, bills paid, and weekends were modest adventures, a matinee or a trail we loved in every season. The garage held bikes that squeaked, paint cans half full, and a ladder we promised to use. We coordinated calendars without thinking, traded grocery lists and photos, and made a game of stretching paychecks to cover braces and summer camps. Love seemed like competence performed daily. I believed longevity protected us like a tree ring, proof that time had thickened into strength. Nothing in that ordinary pulse suggested a second narrative was threading itself through ours. Small disturbances arrived in whispers rather than alarms. He began staying late even when projects had cooled, returning with a brightness that did not match spreadsheets. His phone, long a communal object on the counter, migrated to his pocket and learned a new insistence on face recognition. Packages with vague return labels landed at odd hours and vanished before I could fold cardboard for recycling. He took up running at dusk, the same window we used to spend planning repairs and college tours, and posted nothing about it, unusual for a man who measured miles. A cologne I did not choose lingered on jackets, a playlist shifted towards songs discovered nowhere in our house. Friends said we looked steady at barbecues, and the comment pricked like a pin I refused to touch. I watered plants twice and lined up shoes by the door, then told myself pressure bends habits and long marriages survive awkward seasons. Suspicion grew the way rust does, quietly, along edges everyone stops checking. He mixed up meeting locations, describing a lobby mural that belonged to another building across town. He praised a new cafe and then forgot its hours when I suggested a Saturday visit. A duplicate travel kit appeared under the trunk organizer, tucked beside a picnic blanket we never used. The dog waited by the door at odd times and then gave up, choosing the hallway rug as if redirecting loyalty to the house itself. He started using phrases that weren't his, a softened corporate poetry about runway and lift that sounded borrowed. When I asked about a dent on the bumper, he said a cart had caught it, light as weather. I stopped narrating away coincidences and began writing dates in a small notebook I labeled simply now, as if designating time could anchor truth before it slipped off the page. Tangible clues traveled with numbers that did not care about narratives. The joint card logged consecutive charges at a riverside bistro during hours he usually avoided traffic. A rideshare receipt landed in our shared email with a pickup outside a co-working loft he had never mentioned and a drop at a boutique hotel hidden behind a parent company's name. Mileage on the car spiked on Tuesdays. Cash withdrawals appeared in neat, repeating amounts near a florist 2 towns over. The cloud auto-saved a photo of cupcakes on a tablecloth I did not recognize, captured by a careless thumb. His calendar filled with gray blocks labeled planning, a neutrality that multiplied like rabbits. Individually, each line could shrug. Together they formed a map I pretended not to see, a sketch of new gravity pulling him downstream. I printed statements, slid them into a folder, and acknowledged that truth needed a place to live. Verification required a steady pulse and public spaces. I arranged for our son to study at a friend's house, told myself I needed groceries, and parked across from the bistro on a drizzly Thursday. Through tall windows I recognized his posture softened into admiration, shoulders angled toward a woman whose gestures matched his sentences before he finished them. They sat on the banquette with the ease of practice, 2 people orbiting a private center. No theatrics presented themselves, only shared dessert, paired laughter, and the kind of synchronized exit that comes from repetition. I did not take pictures. I memorized the server's apron, the yellow scarf draped over a chair, and the way rain made a cinema of the glass. On the drive home, the windshield wipers kept time while my breath tried to learn it. Observation replaced guessing, and the house met me with a silence that honored what I already knew. Confirmation arrived without fireworks, only the alignment of many small proofs. A property search tied his name to a short-term lease near the river, co-signed by someone whose email I recognized from company newsletters. The hotel loyalty portal showed points accumulated on dates that mirrored my notebook. The school district's page thanked volunteers after a fun run, and along the photo's edge his jacket appeared blurred but unmistakable. On a Sunday afternoon, from a respectful distance, I saw him lift a little boy onto a swing, then adjust a woman's scarf with practiced tenderness. The gesture landed like a gavel. Shock did not detonate. It clarified. I understood that secrets had been engineered, not stumbled into. Only one life would continue under my roof. I closed the laptop, stacked printouts square, and let the decision rise like a tide I could not deny anymore that night. Immediate fallout demanded decisions that would hold the roof steady. I cooked something simple, packed leftovers into labeled containers, and set bedtime on time, building a small perimeter of normal for the kids. After dishes, I arranged the folder, login screenshots, and a bullet list on the table. The list contained verbs rather than feelings, separate spaces, financial triage, legal consult, communication limited to parenting and logistics. When he came home, I used dates and addresses like coordinates, then directed him to the guest room until we formalized separation. I did not stage a tribunal. I set parameters. I called my sister to host a sleepover, messaged the school about pickup changes, and turned off notifications that did not belong to emergencies. Sleep came shallow and brief, but morning arrived, and the plan still held. I poured coffee, steadied my hands on the mug, and chose the next practical step. Cutting ties began with domestic tasks that proved their own point. I changed the front door code, moved shared passwords into a vault with new keys, and boxed photos for later sorting rather than impulse erasure. I blocked the colleague everywhere after preserving what counsel would need, not as vengeance but as a firewall. 2 close friends received a neutral summary and assignments, one to redirect curious relatives, one to shepherd carpools without commentary. I returned borrowed items to neighbors with polite brevity and declined invitations that required pretending. The dog migrated between rooms like a diplomat, finally choosing my doorway. I archived our couple photos instead of deleting them, giving memory a controlled timeline. Boundaries did not heal anything that week. They merely stopped the injury from traveling farther, the way a tourniquet buys time while the body remembers how to clot. For the first time in months, sleep arrived without bargaining. Legal and practical logistics translated hurt into sequence. The attorney turned chaos into drafts, separation terms, temporary support, discovery requests, and a parenting plan with neutral exchanges under bright lobby cameras. HR updated beneficiaries and adjusted my schedule so hearings would not turn our daughter into a courier of adult stress. I opened a checking account in my name and rerouted direct deposit, then listed essential bills with due dates and confirmation numbers in a spreadsheet I could trust at 3 a.m. The mortgage servicer annotated the file, insurance policies were split, retirement statements were printed and filed in a fireproof box beside passports and the deed. Calendars shifted into custody blocks described in plain, enforceable language. Stability arrived as case numbers, receipts, and passwords belonging only to me. Each completed form closed a drawer that had hung open for months, dangerously loose, and the house exhaled like a system finally patched. Kids and family dynamics required honesty calibrated to carry. We told our teenagers that adults sometimes keep promises badly and that 2 homes would serve us better than 1 unhappy house. Their questions were practical: cars, holidays, whose room became the spare, and I answered with boring precision. Teachers heard enough to watch for drift. Coaches learned pickup changes without learning why. Grandparents wanted stories and received logistics. I refused to export adult weight into kid spaces and banned speculation from our living room. At exchanges we kept tones clipped and civil, proof that politeness can be a life jacket. Rituals steadied the weeks: pancakes on Fridays, library Tuesdays, a 10-minute walk after homework to reset the air. The dog rotated beds like an envoy. By month's end, laughter appeared in flashes again, bright and ordinary, and sleep lengthened into something earned rather than negotiated. A magnet calendar on the fridge let them move pieces themselves. Rebuilding arrived disguised as chores that had waited through entire seasons. I learned the latter's balance and replaced the porch light he always meant to fix. I scheduled a physical, a dental cleaning, and an eye exam, placing each appointment on a calendar that once held anniversaries. I sold the chair shaped by absence and rearranged the room until sight lines stopped arguing with memory. At sunrise I circled the lake, not to outrun grief but to practice finishing loops I set for myself. A weekend finance class returned a quiet authority to numbers, and I opened a savings account named Future Repairs, transferring modest amounts with private pride. Friends who stayed brought soup instead of strategies, and I learned to ask for specific help. The folder of evidence slid into a drawer. The point had shifted from proving harm to practicing care. Identity followed behavior, quiet and durable, like a light left on for myself. Reflection reframed 2 decades not as a sunk cost, but as experience I could carry forward without dragging wreckage. Trusting was not the mistake. Breaking the contract was. Longevity had become camouflage for maintenance failures, the way a fresh coat of paint hides soft wood. I decided forgiveness, where it sprouts, would be a clearance within me that refuses to store poison, not a shortcut back to what broke. I will be civil in emails and precise in calendars. I will keep our children's world boring on purpose and my boundaries visible without apology. Some mornings the house still hums with familiar sounds, the kettles click, the hinges creak, and I let them be neither omen nor nostalgia, only evidence of living. Forward looks ordinary and therefore precious. Clear budgets, repaired hinges, early walks, and a door that locks because my hand knows the key. Hope returns as maintenance done daily.